Champions. I'm Amy Morgan, the feature writer for the Marriage Initiative, and I'm delighted to introduce Shannon Ethridge to you today. Shannon is an advocate for healthy intimacy, providing personal coaching and group workshops to women in need of healing and to couples seeking a more vibrant sexual connection. Shannon has taught and counseled thousands of young singles and married couples over 3 decades. She's the author of 22 books, including The Sexually Confident Wife, Connecting with Your Husband, Mind, Body, Heart, Spirit, and 4 titles in the Every Woman's Battle series about sexual and emotional integrity. Shannon also is the winner of a Gold Medallion Award for Excellence in Publishing. Shannon, thank you so much for being here.
Amy, thank you so much for your interest in this topic. I'm honored to be a part of the conversation today.
Well, that was really, it's been really fun to go on this journey with you. Speaking of journey, let's start with your journey. How did you get into this realm of speaking about healthy and appropriate sexuality?
Well, interestingly enough, the PR firm that worked with the Every Woman's Battle series, when they learned that I used to be a mortician, they were like, "That's it. That's where you need to start." So that's where I typically start. I wanted to be a pathologist, like Quincy in the show,
Oh, I
but I
love
couldn't afford
Quincy.
medical school. Yeah. So I just thought, well, being an embalmer will be the next best thing since I can't afford medical school. Well, I was expecting to be embalming people in their 80s, 90s who just reached the end of their life and died of natural causes. But in Dallas, Texas, I was shocked at how many people I was embalming. Almost every shift, there would be at least 1 or 2 people who had died because of complications with AIDS, or they committed suicide when they got an HIV positive diagnosis. Because back in the late 80s, early 90s, HIV was a death sentence back then. And so it was just a huge wake-up call that even though I had been incredibly promiscuous in my teen years, somehow God had saved me. I would go and get tested for HIV and it would come back negative. And I would just pray, "Lord, how did you save me from myself and my own stupidity?" And I sensed God saying back then, "Shannon, I'll redeem your past if you'll trust me with your future." And so that was just a huge pivotal point for me to go from embalmer to youth pastor, and then seeing how many young people were just really curious and some experimenting, some were already ridden with guilt and shame. And I just thought, I want to help these young people process this sexual and emotional baggage that they've created for themselves in ways that I didn't know how to do until I was in my late 20s.
Yeah. Oh, that was so needed. And so you started then talking to teens and young adults, all right, about appropriate.
Yeah, I started out with high school students and college students, but over the past 30 years, I've obviously grown up with that audience. So now I mostly coach middle-aged women who have lost that love and feeling. They don't know where to find it. They're not even sure if they want to find it. They've been so indoctrinated into that purity culture that was very shaming of women. In hindsight, we didn't know that at the time. I was part of the purity movement. And so we didn't know how much repressing was taking place with some of those messages. And so now to help a woman kind of deconstruct both her sexuality and her spirituality, and to understand that, hey, having a vibrant sexual connection with your husband is totally different than the sexual impropriety or immorality that you maybe dabbled in your teen or college years. And so I just help women reclaim that power and reclaim the gift of sexual intimacy in marriage.
I love that. I love how you talked about that. You started then too with, like you said, Steve Arterburn and the Every Woman series, and you wrote 4 books in that. Let's go in a little bit about what you said there, because some of that was, I mean, those are best, I mean, they're very well known and you're very well lauded for those.
Well, thank you. When the Every Man's Battle series came out, it was really all about men's addiction to pornography and looking at women's body parts and sexualizing them. I didn't feel as if that was really that wasn't the heart of what women struggle with. I felt like women wear their heart on their sleeve. For a woman, they're more likely to get involved in love addiction, relationship addiction, and those can lead to sexual addiction when sex is part of the equation. So it's really more about guarding your heart from falling for the guy that you're not supposed to be falling for, and channeling all those energies toward the guy that you are supposed to be falling for. So we did Every Woman's Battle for adult women. Every Young Woman's Battle was for like 13 to 19. We did Preparing Your Daughter for Every Woman's Battle for parents to read with their 8 to 12-year-old daughters. And then
Yeah.
we did Every Woman's Marriage because, again, we wanted to really focus on what should be happening. It's not enough to tell people what they shouldn't be doing. We need to guide them toward what will bring them fulfillment because that's what we're all looking for. So to help them reignite that passion and pleasure, that romance, that interest that's supposed to be part and parcel with the human experience. But again, during that purity culture, that knob just got dialed way, way down, and women haven't felt comfortable turning it back up. And husbands have found themselves incredibly frustrated that they don't seem to be able to find that magic switch to turn her back on.
Yeah.
And so husbands, I think, probably love my books even more than women do. I probably get as many emails from husbands that I do women saying, I'm just so grateful for what you've done for our marriage.
Oh, I love that. Well, before we go, because I definitely want to dive into the sexually confident wife, because I think that, I mean, that has some really interesting things in there that are so helpful. But you did say, sometimes a woman will get into like a pornography addiction, which you wouldn't think, but the slippery slope is sometimes maybe she finds it with her husband. You explain, because you know better than what you told me.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes she finds it because she's been exposed to it through her husband. Oftentimes she saw it long before he ever came into the picture. Sometimes it's that she knows that he is looking at pornography and she is so curious that she goes digging to see what it is that she's working against, what it is that she's having to compete with. And oftentimes she will find herself addicted to going down a path where the stimulation has to be more and more intense and you have to keep ratcheting it up a notch. And so oftentimes women find themselves addicted and they never intended to experience that. But we have to understand the pornography industry is very targeted toward the human brain, and male or female, we can find ourselves caught up in that hook of addiction. And so I often tell women, to expose yourself to it, to understand his struggle, that is not even a necessary part of the equation, because his struggle didn't start with the images on the screen. His struggle started with how he feels internally, the dialogue he has in his own head that makes him feel less than, that makes him feel inadequate, that he often turns to images of other women looking very confident and looking at him as if he's the man. But we all know that that's a complete mirage.
Yeah.
He doesn't know her. She'll never know him. And so men have just really fallen for this lure, and women have often found themselves fallen right along with them.
Yeah. Well, and that's a really great, caution. And also too, we talk a little bit about to looking at those, like you said, those airbrushed pictures, that only is going to make a wife feel worse about herself, because there's absolutely no way a real person can compete with something that's not even real and
Right.
probably 20 years younger.
Right. Even the model herself can't compete with those airbrushed finished photos. But here's the thing, the body image bear is a very real thing. And yes, if looking at images of perfected women who have been airbrushed are going to make you feel worse about yourself, take that into account. Don't even go that direction. Rather, I would say, look in the mirror and pick out parts that you can appreciate. Pick out things about yourself that you can love, because we all have parts that are not our favorite parts, but we also have parts that we can be, pretty confident about. And we also have to remember, just because that's what he has looked at does not mean that that's what he actually wants, because 99% of men will tell you that is not more attractive than the woman he is married to. And that doesn't matter her size or shape. It doesn't matter how many kids she's had or how many stretch marks she has or how much cellulite she has. What's really attractive to him is a woman who is open and receptive and even pursuant of his sexual energies. Confidence is what's sexy. Sexy has never been about size or shape. It's always been about confidence. And you think about the pornographic images, that's what they're trying to splash on their face. But you and I both know it's because they're hungry to feed their kids and they got to do what they got to do, or they don't know how to survive any other way, or, whatever the case may be. But for a woman to be organically confident of all of her curves, all of her ripples and dimples, and just so eager to share what God has given her with what God has given her in the sense of her husband, that's what's really sexy. But
Yeah.
so often men just don't know how to unleash that beast inside of her. But it's not up to him to unleash it. It's up to us. It's up to us to get in touch with how God wired our brains and our bodies to work together in tandem to create that sexual interest.
Well, I love that you mentioned that. I know you gave an analogy of, like men don't seem to have, like, there's not a bald man with his beer belly hiding in the corner and his robe going. Yeah, you tell that story because that the way you
Then
put
we
it,
just we need to take a lesson from men, because you never hear of a husband cowering in the corner in a fuzzy robe going, she can't love me with this beer belly and this bald head. There's no way she finds me sexy. They're just like, bring it on, baby. We need to be like, just bring it on. It does not matter how old we are or what size our clothes are. None of that matters. It's about our willingness and our availability, our interest. To be a sexually confident wife is the sexiest thing on the planet to our husbands. And I think a lot of men stumble into pornography. And I'm not trying to blame the victims. I'm not trying to blame women. I'm just simply describing. I'm not prescribing that this is okay. I'm just describing. Oftentimes men turn and look to pornography because they feel as if their wives are just so trapped behind this wall of inhibition, of shame, of just feeling guilty about any of it. And he in his desperation takes his sexual energies online. And that is incredibly unfortunate. I don't recommend it. It leads to all kinds of painful places for both husbands and wives. So just to encourage women that, hey, just celebrate the body that God gave you. Celebrate the season that you're in. Celebrate what your body is capable of. That's the beautiful part, is that God made the female body to be just as sexual and responsive as the male body. In fact, more so, because we have twice as many nerve endings. So we have to remember that sex is not just something we do for our husbands just to pacify him. If that's how we're going about it, we're going about it all wrong. Sex is for the female. According to Jewish tradition, it's the woman's right, it's the wife's right to be sexually satisfied. And if she's not, she has the right to divorce. Now, again, I'm not being prescriptive. I'm just being descriptive of ancient Jewish traditions. Historically, it was the female who felt the right, that it was her right to be sexually satisfied. I don't know how we lost that in our Christian culture today, but we have definitely lost it. I'm in search of helping people regain it.
Oh, well, and you in the book, you really go in to some interesting, like, hormonal chemical reactions, the way God created our bodies to
Yes.
react chemically. And one of the things that you talk about is oxytocin. And I hope I said that right. I get that's one of
Yes.
the words that I always.
Perfect.
Oh, but anyway, talk about that reaction, about, that just what that does, and how the lack of touching or touching, how that can just even be a place to start. But first of all, what is it?
Oxytocin that's the magic elixir that flows through your veins. And sometimes it flows higher and sometimes it flows lower. The times that it flows the highest is when we're engaged in sexual pleasure with our husbands, or when we're breastfeeding our children, when we are skin to skin with people that we love and feel bonded to. That is when the oxytocin flows.
Yeah.
However, if you don't let oxytocin flow very often, what happens is that the body adjusts and then you lose all interest. So I describe oxytocin as a spiral.
Yeah.
The more you touch, the more you want to be touched. It's a spiral upward with all these hormones flowing through your body, doing what they're designed by God to do. However, if you don't allow yourself to be touched for whatever reason, over and over, it's causing a downward spiral. And the less you are touched, the less you want to be touched. So women who tell me that they feel frigid, I often challenge them. Did you work yourself into your own state of frigidity, resisting and refusing? And if that's the case, maybe just start with warming yourself back up, with just asking your husband to hold you in a non-sexual way. Just somehow get skin to skin so you can start that oxytocin process jump starting again.
Well, and that's something you might not even think about because, like you said, breastfeeding a child, or I'm just thinking like of the woman who's got littles hanging all over her. She's,
she can feel at the end of the day, she just wants her body to be her own. But we have to remember that what adults do and what moms do with children are two totally different things. And you can't let one substitute for the other, because we only have those children 16 to 18, 20 years max. Our husbands we have for a lifetime. And I think this is probably one of the number one reasons why the most common season for a couple to experience separation or divorce is during the empty nest season. Because once those kids are out of the house, they kind of look at each other and go, who are you again? They just become foreign to each other or roommates at best. So to keep that sexual connection strong throughout those children's lives, such that once the nest gets emptied, then they're like, hallelujah, now we don't have to close the door and be so quiet. That's what we're aiming for.
Oh, I like that. And again, just starting out even with a non-sexual hug. But once you start practicing the hugs, because oxytocin is not just a woman's hormone, it's the male hormone as well, right? That can bond him. Talk a little bit about that, because it goes both ways.
Absolutely, it goes both ways. We are designed to want to touch and be touched. Babies come out of the womb longing, just flashing or thrashing and flailing to be held tight by mama. This is something that we never lose. And also, I frequently call parents' attention to the fact that your children are also in need of oxytocin. So once they get too old to cuddle and snuggle, you need to find other ways. So giving, back massages or scalp massages or something to where you can touch each other in a family is really important. Or dad sometimes report wrestling is kind of his way of bonding with his teenage son or college age son or whatever. And then also, so vitally important, children need to witness their mother and their father engaging in physical intimacy outside of the bedroom with appropriate, snuggles and hugs and strokes and holding hands during a movie and whatever. Yeah. Because as a youth pastor way back in the day, 30 years ago, when I was teaching to save sex until marriage is the place for hot sex to happen. So many teenagers would be like, lady, you have lost your mind. Parents don't have sex. And I would say, what in the world makes you think that? And he said, well, my parents don't have sex. And so I would challenge back.
You're here, aren't you?
That impression. Well, the response was often, my parents don't even kiss or hold hands or go out on dates. What makes you think they have sex, lady? I can't argue with that. Yeah. So we really have to send the message loud and clear that you are secure in this household because mom and dad have a great relationship and we do still date each other. And marriage is the place where healthy romance and relationship and intimacy happen.
Oh, yes, that is aspirational for our young people.
And absolutely. And this younger generation, they're like marriage optional. No, thanks. I think that a lot of that kind of came out of that purity movement culture where I'm not going to blame the women, men too, but just there has been a big sexual divide in so many marriages the past 10 to 20 years. And it's just now really coming to the forefront of conversation where we're recognizing this. We're no longer sticking our heads in the sand as Christians going, well, as long as you do it God's way, you're going to have a great sex life. He's going to bless you. It's like, this is what so many couples walk down the aisle expecting, is that we did it the right way. We saved sex until marriage, so he's going to bless us. And then they start struggling and they get confused and bewildered and they get angry and they shut down and they withdraw. And this is not what they signed up for. So just helping them unpack those expectations and really learn how to communicate better about your own needs. Because I think that there's a lot of anger and disillusionment and disappointment that your partner doesn't know how to meet your needs. Yeah. And my challenge back to that mate is, how well do you know your own needs? Because if your mate doesn't know them, it's because you haven't taught them. We are responsible for our own needs. First, we have to understand them ourselves, then we have to acknowledge them, then we have to communicate those. And it's something that we have to reinforce over and over. And so oftentimes, mates really don't know what their spouse wants or needs. They're completely clueless and are like, I've tried everything and nothing seems to work. Yeah. It's our responsibility to take ownership for our own sexual energies and to show up in those marriage relationships.
Yeah, because you had said that people were taught to turn the dial down and down, but you have a great analogy about what happens when you turn the dial down.
When you turn the music so low, you forget how to dance.
Yeah. Well, I know you talked about some other obstacles, and trauma and abuse can be an obstacle that really can get in a woman's head and really help prevent her from, responding to her husband. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely. I mean, so many women, I want to say that the statistic is between 30 and 40% of women have been sexually abused by the time they're 18.
Mm.
That's just in their childhoods. That doesn't even include college age and beyond. And so, yes, a woman often associates any sexual energies with something painful, degrading, dirty, shameful.
Mm.
And so, to help a woman divorce herself, so to speak, from those negative feelings around her sexuality, and to recognize that even though she's been misused, the word abuse is abuse, to use something for a purpose other than which it was intended. Well,
Yeah.
oftentimes in my workshops, I will challenge women. If I took out one of your grandmother's porcelain china plates and I said, let's go out in the front yard, and I threw it at you like a frisbee,
Oh,
like, of course you would panic and you would try to catch it and try to let it not fall to the ground and break. But even though I used it for a purpose other than which it was intended, would it be any less valuable?
hmm.
No, absolutely not. And as human beings, we are no less valuable just because we were used in a way that God never intended. And we have to remember how resilient the human spirit is. There are lots of people on the planet, myself included, who were sexually abused, treated inappropriately by adults that they respected and trusted. And we drug that baggage into adulthood, but we can unpack it, we can dissect it, we can understand it, we can understand how it's impacted us, and we can heal from that. Just like a cut on your arm will eventually heal because our bodies are designed to be resilient, the human spirit is as well.
Oh, well, and that is very hopeful. And I know you share that when you counsel people one on one, and with groups. With you do that with couples, whether or maybe just a woman who comes and starts with that. Is that kind of how it starts? Like maybe a woman would do a consultation with you and start talking through that. I know you have a great analogy about the area around a scar.
Yes. Well, when you think about a scar, it heals tougher than the area around it. So women who are survivors of sexual abuse or emotional abuse or spiritual abuse, we are often the strong ones out there on the front lines of battle trying to help other people heal. So there's kind of a really bright silver lining to that cloud. So yes, women usually will schedule a free 15-minute consultation to just discuss what roadblock she feels like she's up against, whether that's, excuse me, whether that's body image issues, whether that's the purity movement, cultural conditioning, whether that's her husband's approach. Sometimes women just say, the way that he touches me just makes me feel so slimy. And I have to really remind husbands that this groping and copping a feel and doing things to her when she's not even expecting it, when she has her back turned to you, that is abusive. That is never going to warm her up and make her feel like, oh, I really want to give my body to you. That's not how it works. She feels violated, scared, threatened. She's on her parasympathetic nervous system just went haywire because of you. She needs to know that you're coming toward her. She needs to feel an embrace, a caress. She needs to feel non sexual touch before she's comfortable letting you touch her in any sexual way. So sometimes it's a matter of coaching them both to recognize their needs, communicate their needs, and to respect and honor each other's needs.
Well, I'm so glad because I wanted to go back to that because one of the things that you really talk about in the sexually confident wife and about the needs, when you talk about once a couple, a husband and wife, are aligned, physically, mentally, and spiritually,
When they're
they
in sync.
yes, and there's a purpose. And you said that there are several purposes, but do you want to go into your purposes of a husband and wife being aligned in those ways?
Right. Well, obviously there's pair bonding. We are, the Bible says it's not good for man to be alone, women either. We work better together as a team when it comes to parenting, when it comes to domestic responsibilities, financial management. I think that we're more powerful together when it comes to spiritual issues as well because we are wired for connection. So there's
Yes.
that. And then of course there's pleasure. I mean that's one of the main payoffs of a passionate sexual connection is that pleasure is our birthright as human beings. And honestly can't remember what the third P is because it's been 20 years since I wrote those books. But pair bonding and pleasure, I remember that front
It
and
starts
center.
with P and procreation, having children. But the one I was really interested was the pair bond, because that was
Yes.
something that you kind of, really, and that's kind of something that you really go into in the book, The Sexually Confident Wife, about how, again, when you guys are on the same page, you a wife and a husband, including sexually, then it just, that oxytocin is,
Everything clicks.
yes,
The small things feel small. You feel equipped to handle the big things because you feel like you're on the same page. There's
yes,
no competing, there's no comparisons, there's no criticism and complaint. You
yes,
just feel as if you're a unified front. You
yes,
feel as if you can be honest about what you want or what you don't want. You feel like you can initiate without fear of rejection.
yes,
You feel as if sex is kind of the outcome, but it's not the means to an end. It's not that we have to have sex to feel like we're a strong couple. It's that because we're a strong couple, sex is the obvious outpouring of that. And so it's just a lot more of an organic experience that couples are just so close to one another spiritually, mentally, and emotionally that to get together physically doesn't seem like such a tall order. But
yes.
couples who really aren't pair bonded, who don't feel like they function well as a team or have tension and conflict to a great degree in certain areas, sexual intimacy can feel like a mountain to climb. And the idea of getting to that pinnacle can just seem either overwhelming or impossible.
Yeah, well, and that's really aspirational to talk about, because again, as you were describing that oxytocin spiral, it kind of is the same thing with the pair bond, because
Absolutely.
you're either ramping things up and again working as a team and feeling aligned, spiritually, physically, emotionally, or you're starting to disconnect and unravel that spiral.
Right. And it's really important that we really master this ability to pair bond because think about it as we age. Now, I'm not saying that you age out of being able to be sexually intimate. I think that if you continue to use it, you won't lose it. But if you don't use it, you will lose it. But
Yeah.
the pair bonding is really what keeps us strong decade after decade, regardless of some of the challenges that come part and parcel with aging when it comes to sexual intimacy.
Right. That and hiding in a robe in the corner is not going to help things.
It's not sexy, not confident, but it sometimes can be the go-to for women who are just afraid. I mean, we really have to just call it out for what it is. If it's fear that's keeping you from lowering your guard and connecting with your husband to become fully alive, to experience what God designed your body to be able to experience what's possible between a husband and a wife in this whole pair bonding realm. If it's fear that's holding you back, we need to talk, baby girl, because that is no way to live.
Oh, I love that. And you also do some intensive workshops sometimes. Like you might start talking with a woman, do a little bit of couples work with them together. And then for those, especially those who maybe are dealing with some abuse or negative emotions or things that really need to go deeper, you do some intensive women at the well intensives.
Absolutely. We've been doing those for 13 years. And it is amazing to watch a woman come in on day one full of fear and anxiety, but over time realize that, hey, these women are kind of in the same boat as me. We're kind of on the same page here. And then to watch them overcome their fear and anxiety and start opening up and talking about how they really feel and then connecting dots and realizing how they really feel. Some women have just never had the opportunity to be heard enough for her to recognize the ways that she feels. And then to watch her blossom, to watch a level of confidence bubble up from down deep in her soul to the surface. We have often said we wish we could take before and after photos of women on day one and those same women on day four, because they look 10 years younger, they look 10 pounds lighter, their shoulders are back, their heads are up, they're glowing, they're eager to get home to these husbands, that they realize that, hey, I've wasted enough time. I'm ready to become that sexually confident wife. So it's usually day 5 or 6 that I start getting flowers and phone calls and text messages from husbands saying, I don't know what you did with the woman that I sent you, but I'm keeping the woman you sent back because she's my dream lover and I didn't know this was possible. So
Oh,
that's what puts a smile on my face at the end of the day, just seeing what a difference it makes in couples relationships.
well, I love that. Shannon, thank you so much for being here.
Amy, you are most welcome. Again, thank you for your interest in this topic. Not every media outlet is comfortable talking about sex, so thank you for your courage and your boldness in addressing this really important topic.
Well, you opened some eyes about this it is an important topic. And as always, Marriage Champions, if you're interested in finding more about Shannon Ethridge and her resources, you can always find us at marriageinitiative.org and marriageresources.org.